about to head up that barren mountainside there. All them trees were knocked over. Okay, we're gonna head up to the very top right there. Guys, I brought you on top of this barren top here for a reason, and I'm gonna show you that right now. Alright, so I brought you guys up here with me. This is a barren mountaintop where a tornado came through and ripped all these trees over, and now the area lays quite barren. All these down trees everywhere, and it's just pretty much new growth, a lot of pine trees towards the top. So the reason I brought you up here is to point out one of the 3 ways to use plants or trees to find your direction. Now there's a lot of things in nature we can use to navigate with, and you know, those things can include the sun and the stars and the moon, or plants and trees, animals, insects. A lot of things can actually point you where you want to go, and you don't always need a compass. However, the compass is your best method, followed by the sun and the stars and the moon, and then all these other indicators fall in next. Okay, it's good to know them all. You can even use the sea to navigate. Maritimers back in the day, the Vikings and stuff, would use the sea to navigate, you know, by waves hitting an island, and those waves would come straight, then they hit the island and they come in like this and cross and make a pattern that shows that there's an island this way. Okay, they knew the island was there before you could even see it. So there's a lot of ways to navigate and find our direction, so we shouldn't have to worry about finding direction no matter where we are in the world. Okay, I'm going to point out something for the northern hemisphere that should help us out. Now the reason that I brought you up here is because there's very few trees, and I can really demonstrate this method here quite well. All these trees here are predominantly pointing in one direction. They're all growing in one direction, and that would be towards the south. Okay, in the northern hemisphere, south is the direction where most of your sunlight comes from. Okay, the sun in its most is in the south, okay, throughout the day. So all your trees, to maximize photosynthesis, are going to be growing in a southerly direction. Now the reason that that helps us is because if we don't have any other method of finding direction, we just look around at the trees, and we have to circle them because it can be misleading. Okay, you have to take a look and examine a few different trees, and you can get a very close southerly direction for yourself. The first step we got to take if we're going to use trees to navigate is find an area, a field, a mountaintop with few trees, or a place where trees have fallen over and there's a few tall trees left. Those trees are going to show you, more so than trees in a thick wooded area, which direction south is. Okay, if you're in a thick wooded area, everything's going to be fighting for sunlight, and it's going to be very confusing. Okay, you can really mislead yourself in a thicker forest. You need to find something that definitely has exposure. Okay, if you're going to go on a barren mountaintop like this, don't go on one side or the other, go right to the top. Okay, because one side or the other might not be south, one might be north, the other might be east or west. You don't know that, so that can be confusing. So it's best to go towards the top and ask the trees at the top which way south is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you a couple trees, small and large, and even dead, that can help point us using this method to a southerly direction, and we will compare it with our compass. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about here. Right in front of me there's a tree, the one with the V shape in it. Alright, if we zoom in on that tree there, you see how all them branches are leaning towards the right? Okay. Now if we were to circle that tree and really check it out and make sure that that is the direction it's pointing, we would see that that actually points in a south direction. Now, notice, I am at the very top of this, okay? I'm not on the side, I'm not in the front or the back, I'm on the very top. That matters. What that means is that tree is going to be pointing definitely in a southerly direction, which we can clearly see that all these branches are growing in a particular direction. They're all protruding that way. They're all pointing to a direction. Okay? So now, I'm going to keep you with me here. We can turn to the right here and we see that the sun is right there. It's right above my camera right now. I won't shoot right at it, but it's right above my camera. Okay? I come back to this tree here. Okay, so I'm going to bring the compass into play now. So what I need to do is I'm going to look at that tree just so you guys know that I'm not fooling with you. I'm going to bring that in, and right now I put myself at a 90-degree angle to them branches. Okay, so them branches are branching out this way. I'm standing directly 90 degrees from the angle that they're protruding out. Okay, so I need to just take and make a 90-degree turn. I'll put my arm out 90 degrees, the direction that they are pointing, and I'm going to come over and I'm going to stop right there with the camera. Okay, so this is the direction that they're pointing. Now I'm going to lay my compass flat. Okay, I need to make sure that it's flat, and then I'm going to bring you guys in to look at the direction. Okay, so I bring you in here, and you can clearly see that that compass is almost in the doghouse there, pointing south. Just a hair that way right there, and we got south. Okay, so those branches definitely gave me a southerly direction. If I would have went with those and I needed to go south or find a different direction, I would have found it using that tree. So using our compass, we can verify this method, and we can gain more with this skill the more and more we practice and discover and learn. So it's important that we find different trees in different areas and find the good and the bad using this method. Okay, I can look at all these other trees and see they're doing the same thing. Alright, so I came over here now to this smaller tree, and this is the reason that you wouldn't want to use smaller ones. You need to think about this, and this is what I mean about testing different trees. Okay, we can look at this tree and clearly see that it has very few branches on this side. Okay, one, that could be from this falling and knocking branches off because it's right there in that path. Two, we've got all this growth right here in these down trees. Okay, I've got a tree here, and I've got some down pine right here, big one. Okay, that's actually shading this. Okay, now south is right here, but these branches are growing okay, right now I have my compass pointing due south. Okay, but we look at these branches here. Now we look at these branches and they're not pointing south. They're growing this direction, which would be west. Okay, so why are they growing west? Well, that is because it has a tree right here that's blocking its southerly exposure. Okay, so what this tree is doing is it's growing out here into this open area and hitting the sun here. It's trying to expose itself out here to this open spot to get that southerly exposure. So you need to be careful what trees you use, and that's why I told you go to the very top, find tall trees and use those. If we go and we find a small tree up top and we say, hey, look at that, definitely it's missing branches here, this has got to be south. Well, now we're heading west because we just made a mistake by using this small tree and didn't think, well, it's got a lot of blocking here and it's got a lot of tree growth right here, and that's actually south. So this thing's trying to grow out to get exposure to the south. So we need to think about what trees we choose. Okay, now I'm over here on the opposite side of the mountain. This would actually be the west side of this mountaintop. Alright, now this is another example of using the top or a very open flat area. This tree here clearly is growing in a certain direction, this pine tree right here. This tree is growing in a southwesterly direction. See, right in front of me here is a bunch of trees that are blocking it, and it's growing out here to get that exposure back this way to all that sunlight. So using this method can be tricky, but if done right, you can get a very accurate reading. Okay, so we can clearly see that trees definitely want to get that maximum exposure to sunlight. Okay, they're going to do whatever it takes to get to that sunlight. It's a fight. I hope this video, guys, shows you the do's and don'ts of using plants that grow towards the sun to find navigation. I hope this shows you that not all trees growing in a certain direction can show you the right way. I hope it shows you how to find those trees, okay? A nice flat area, a tree that's got full exposure all the way around it is the best way. Look at multiple trees in your area. Are they all pointing the same way? Or are they all scattered all which way because they're just fighting for sunlight? Up here, I showed you that tree up there clearly has a 360-degree view all the way around it. Okay, it's not on the side, it's not in front, it's on the very top. Okay, so that shows me that this thing is going to give me the most accurate southerly direction. Alright, and that's why I came up here. So I could show you a few different things in this field. And then I showed you that little pine tree that clearly is growing one direction, but does not point us south. Okay, it points us west because it's trying to get away from everything else. Now I know I mentioned there's 3 ways to use plants out here, okay, and trees, and there is. Another one of those ways is wind. Now you might ask, how can we use wind to tell our direction? Well, that would be because everywhere in the world there is a prevailing wind. Okay, the wind is going to come from a certain direction more so than other directions throughout the year. The wind's going to come from different directions in your area, but the predominant direction that it comes from will leave indicators on plants and trees, okay? They might be bowed over, they're all leaning a certain way. Now, in this area in the mountains where there's valleys and stuff, mountains are tough because the valleys and downward and upward breezes, nighttime, daytime, has a huge effect on which way that wind's coming from. The prevailing winds in most of the United States come from the west to the east, okay? But here, it's during the daytime southwesterly and during the nighttime northeasterly, okay? And that's because of cooling and heating and coming down and up these slopes and through these valleys. It's pushing it all different directions. Okay, so it's very difficult here to use that method. You're better off using trees with sunlight exposure than using wind. But out west, maybe in a prairie land, deserts, you can use deserts, how the sand is blowing, okay? There's multiple places that it actually works quite well. And I urge you to study those areas. Don't just study your own area. I don't just study this. I've lived in Florida and Michigan and studied different techniques and things in places that don't work in the others. They all require different, a lot of you probably travel and go different places, and that's when that bad situation is going to happen. So it's good to study different areas and what works in those areas. Learn more than one method. Okay, now the other method of using plants for navigation isn't necessarily going to point you in a direction like north, south, east, or west. It's going to tell you what might lie ahead. Okay, certain trees like different terrain. Alright, for example, willows and birches and alders, they like their feet wet. So if you are up on a ridge like this right here and you have good eyesight and good plant skills, you might be able to say, hey, way over there I can see it. There's a big patch of birch and alders, and there's some willows down there, which would tell you that there's water. Okay, you might be able to find a river and navigate that river to a bigger river. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to point you in a direction unless you're in an area where the water only runs north or south or east or west. Okay, then hey, this river points me this direction, and you can use the sun from there to give you your accurate, which way's west, which way's east. So there's 3 different methods right there that you can use to help you navigate just using plants alone. Now, the moss around the trees thing going around, a lot of people say it works, a lot of people say it doesn't. Moss definitely does grow on the northern side of trees, But some places, just like I said, in thick forest, it can be confusing using the sun. It can be confusing using moss, because you might walk all the way around that tree and there's moss on every single side. But you might be in an area where the conditions are just right and the moss in that area is growing on one side more so than the other. Okay? Now, use that method with caution. Okay? I urge you to practice that and to see what I'm talking about. Certain areas it will point north, certain areas it's not going to point north. Okay? So use that method with caution. It's yours to discover. It works in some cases and not in others. I've had success with it, and I've had where there's just a circle of moss around every tree in the forest. Okay? So you got to find the right conditions for that. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's any questions or anything, just please ask, and I will be glad to help. I urge you to go practice these primitive skills of navigation and use your compass to verify it. Okay? So take care. Have a good one, guys.